As we get deeper into the NBA offseason, the news is starting to slow down a little bit, but still got news on the Grizzlies sides. Memphis has hired a new assistant coach. Coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies, we're going to talk about what that coach can do for a specific position group. Stay tuned for that. Coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies.
You are Locked On Grizzlies, your daily Memphis Grizzlies podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on, everyone, and welcome back to Locked On Grizzlies. I am your host today, Damichael Cole, beat writer for the Commercial Appeal right here in Memphis, Tennessee. Thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies with me and my co-host, Joel Monarch, who's getting a day off today, each and every single day as we get deeper into the offseason. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Make sure you go take advantage of that over at Gametime. Make sure you continue to like, rate, comment, review, subscribe to all things Locked On Grizzlies. We got some special things planned as we get later into the off season. Look, it's not going to be your typical, day-to-day 5 episodes a week as we get into August, but stay tuned. We might have some special guests on here. You might see some people pop up in and out of Locked On Grizzlies. We got some cool things planned coming up. But speaking of cool things planned, the Grizzlies have made another move on the coaching trail. Again, we talked about Torrance Isolo finalizing his own staff, starting to, put the pieces together for what his coaching staff will look like. And he has made another move. Drew Hill of the Daily Memphian reported it. Darnell Lazare is being hired as an assistant coach for the Memphis Grizzlies. A former coach, with the New Orleans Pelicans last season. Before that, he spent time with the Pelicans pretty much in the coaching role, but director of player personnel, working closely, with the bigs in their position group. This is a guy who has put the work in. He's a former player. He played overseas. He's played in the NBA D League, and then he eventually, got opportunities in the NBA. Actually, season with Memphis as a director of player personnel. He was in Memphis under JB Bickerstaff. So I believe it was Jaren Jackson Jr. Is a player that he may be familiar with, but he was here a while ago, Jaren's rookie year, and after that went to New Orleans. He's kind of spent some time in New Orleans since then, worked his way up to being an assistant coach on the bench on the second row. But when I talk to people in New Orleans, about, Darnell, and what can he potentially bring to this Grizzlies coaching staff? What can he add? And everyone keeps pointing to the same thing. And they point out the fact that he worked very closely with Yves Missi, who was a rookie last season, just like former rookies going into his second year that we're going to talk about in the second segment, and Zach Edey for the Grizzlies. But Yves Missi walked into a situation where I don't think he was expected to start right away. And then the Pelicans, if you watched the Pelicans last season, they had a season that was similar at some points injury-wise to what the Grizzlies went to the year before. But Missi was put into an elevated role, had to kind of grow faster than probably the Pelicans anticipated, had a lot of good moments. Right? Had some moments where it's like, okay, it's clear this guy's young, but he had a lot of really good moments, and a lot of that development, a lot of the time that he spent, in the film room, a lot of the time when he went to the bench, a lot of that was spent with Darnell Lazare being the main voice with him. When you talk to people in New Orleans, they say that this guy specializes in coaching bigs. That was pretty much his role his entire time with New Orleans, whether it was Missi, whether it was Jonas Valanciunas, and other guys before that. That is where he will specialize. That is where he's going to more than likely help the Grizzlies grow. And that's kind of going to be the role that the Grizzlies kind of have him play coming up. But a couple things to add when we talk about his role with Yves Missi and what he did. The story in Athletic by Will Guillory, who does a lot of reporting with the Pelicans. He wrote a story about, Yves Missi and his growth over the course of the season and things like that. And Darnell Lazare is quoted in the story, and there's a lot said about him. And one of the things he said is Lazare has been a crucial voice for Missi this season. He is usually easy to spot in his seat behind the bench, offering advice to Missi when the rookie walks off the floor. Missi said Lazare has been like a big brother for him, and their work has been a big part of adding nuance to his game while also focusing on his priorities closer to the rim. One of those things that they worked uh, closely with was the floater. And I'm gonna hold some of the thoughts Grizzly specific for the second segment and the third segment on why that's specifically important for Memphis. But he worked very closely with Yves Missi, who came into the league, more defensive minded, rim running type of center. Worked really closely with him on developing that floater, not being afraid to shoot it. But there's a lot of mental things that Lazare talks about too. And this is a quote he said that in a way can kind of be relatable to Zach Edey in a way. He said, "We've thrown a lot on him early as a young player, but I think he's handled it well. His ability to process information is very, very high. I try to keep encouraging him because when you're playing as much as he is as a rookie, it's a lot. But I also want to keep challenging him to reiterate how good he is and where I think he can end up in this league. I try to always make him understand that to be great, he has to take care of all of those little things." When you hear that, tell me that can't apply to Zach Edey. Word for word. Every single word that Lazare just said with Yves Missi can be directly translated to what the Grizzlies want, what the Grizzlies need, and what the Grizzlies expect, out of Zach Edey going, into his second season. So really interested to see, how this addition to the coaching staff turns out in terms of what he's going to do for the bigs. I know last season, Anthony Carter, who's no longer on the Grizzlies staff, was one who worked really closely with Zach Edey, but he's gone now. Lazare's in. Looking forward to seeing, what type of role he plays in that. And he joins the list of assistants that the Grizzlies have already hired. Now you got Brian Penny Collins, who, we talked to Isolo about. I talked with Isolo about him at Summer League, and he was very excited, all right, with the way that Penny Collins was engaging with the team already, right? He helped coach the team during the Summer League games in Salt Lake City and Las Vegas. And he was right there sitting on the bench during each of those games. He's a guy with head coaching experience, which is something that Isolo pointed out as well. And that's also the case with the other assistant coach that the Grizzlies brought in, Ryan Saunders. He's someone with head coaching experience, someone who, has head coaching experience actually in the NBA. With Penny Collins, you're talking about head coach experience in college basketball at Tennessee State. But Ryan Saunders, NBA head coaching experience, son of a former NBA coach. And he's going to be the lead assistant. Now, when my co-host Joe Mullinax did the show when Ryan Saunders was announced as the lead assistant, I wasn't around for that one, but I will say, again, just like we did, with Lazare and Penny Collins, I reached out to some people out in Denver, and with Ryan Saunders, there were some really good things said about him. There were some things in the mix as well. One of the things that stood out to me was, that he there's a little bit of surprise from out there in Denver that he's going to be the lead assistant in Memphis. Seems like he's a really good guy, really solid coach, but there is some surprise that he's going to be the lead assistant. But you know what? We'll find out. I mean, I think Joe Mullinax, my co-host, he was fond of the hire. I don't really know a lot about Ryan Saunders myself, other than where he comes from. Right, he's son of Flip Saunders, and he also was a very young NBA coach. Wasn't really in the greatest of situations when he got his coaching opportunity, but that's a lot of coaches when they break into the league or whatever the case may be. But still, was an assistant coach and was a championship winning assistant coach. That's something I'm not going to take away from any coach in this league. You're on a championship team. You made some type of impact to help them get to that level. So what you're seeing so far is Isolo with those first two assistants. He built it out with guys who had head coaching experience. And now with Lazare, you get a guy who pretty much in his entire time in his coaching career, whether it was director of player personnel or being an assistant coach on the bench, he has specialized with bigs. This is no doubt a hire that's supposed to help this team unlock the best out of their bigs with Zach Edey, with Jock Lettendale, Brandon Clark, and maybe even, working with Jaren Jackson Jr. some as well. So we'll see, what that looks like in that move. After that move, now you're talking about 3 new assistants for the Grizzlies. They may not be done. May not be done adding assistants there. You already got, a couple other spots filled as well. So we'll see how that continues to work out. But speaking of working out, now that we know, who the Grizzlies will have as the assistant coach leading the bigs. Now we got to talk about the bigs in the next 2 seconds. Starting off with Zach Edey. It's going to be a big, big year for Zach Edey. Let's talk about him coming up here next on Locked On Grizzlies. But before we get to that, today's episode of Locked On Grizzlies is brought to you by Gametime. Have you ever decided at the last minute to head to a ball game with some friends or family, and maybe it's game day and you suddenly realize you want to be in the stands? And that's exactly where Gametime comes in. It's the easiest way to grab last minute tickets without the stress. With the money you save on tickets, you can splurge on food, drinks, merch, or even invite a bigger group to come with you. Gametime makes it all possible. Gametime makes buying tickets fast and simple. Prices on the app drop closer to first pitch, and they've gotten incredible last-minute deals, clear seat views, and a lowest price guarantee that takes the worry out of mind. Gametime is the official ticketing partner of Locked On MLB, making it easy to browse the app for an exciting upcoming MLB game. And make sure you stay tuned for that. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem the code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download the Gametime app. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Go check that out over now at Gametime. Zach Edey is going to be a big piece for the Memphis Grizzlies this upcoming season. I think many of us can agree to that. I think many of us can agree that he has to be a big piece. And quite frankly, I was encouraged with what I saw in year one. I think at the end of the season, Grizzlies general manager Zach Kleiman put it perfectly when he summed up, how Zach Edey was viewed. Because Zach Edey was always a polarizing pick, right? When he was picked in the draft by the Grizzlies, you had some people saying, oh, I love this pick for the Grizzlies. This is a great pick for Memphis. Then you had some people saying, I hate this pick for the Grizzlies. This is a terrible pick for Memphis. And it just wasn't a lot of in between. It was either you hate the pick or you love the pick for the most part. But what Kleiman said at the end of the season made a lot of sense to me. Basically saying that, look, Zach Edey's 7'4", 290 pounds. When he makes a mistake, everyone's going to see it. So his mistakes just so happen to be louder. And that's why when you got to the play-in and that game against Golden State and any other time he made mistakes, people would easily notice. Whereas when guards and wings make mistakes of the similar ilk, we just move on and basketball continues. But Zach Edey's mistakes, because of his size, because of his proximity to the rim, they just so happen to be a little bit louder. But you know what? That's what happens when you're granted, the protector of the rim title, right? You're 7'4", you're supposed to hold it down on the back end where your teammates get beat off the dribble and things like that. That's what happens. And here's the thing. Here's where I stand on Zach Edey overall. Year one was encouraging. I really think he can get better in year two. He can get better for a lot of reasons. He can get better offensively. He can get better defensively. I am a little concerned. We'll see how after this ankle surgery, how it affects his mobility. Because that was the one thing, if you listen to Zach Edey talk over the course of the season, if you heard him at the end of the season, he wanted to work on his lateral agility, his explosiveness. It was a lot of things centered around, I want to move better so I can help this team later in the game and really over the course of the game. I have to be able to move better and play better in space in the NBA. But with the injury that he just got, it's going to be a little bit tougher. So now you're in a situation where it's going to have this injury. I'm not expecting him to miss a lot of time. Like we talked about that a lot. I just don't see Zach Edey missing too much time. And that's going to be kind of a theme that we echo the rest of this episode. But when he comes back, they're going to ramp him up, all those good things. And they have the depth. They're not going to ask him to play 30 minutes. at least not right away. He started the trend that way under Isolo. Isolo likes Zach Edey a little bit more than Taylor Jenkins did. I'll say that just a little bit more, a lot more. Anyways, a couple things that I really want to focus on when we talk about breaking down Zach Edey's game as he goes into this next season. Number one for me, it's not the defense. It's not the movement. It's something that's simple and something that he could really, I don't want to say easily fix. I can say easily fix. This is two-time National Player of the Year we're talking about. This is something he can easily fix if he puts the work in and he continues to do what he has to do. And that's the touch around the rim. What did we just talk about with Darnell Lazare working on with Yves? The floater. Touch around the rim. Zach Edey takes a lot of hook shots before every game. If you watch him warm up, you're going to see a whole bunch of hook shots. Right hand, left shoulder, right under the basket. And then he slowly starts to back up a little bit. And I pointed out that part. He slowly starts to back up a little bit because that's the key. If you watched Zach Edey last season, what your eyes should have shown you was a guy who was flat out dominant right under the basket. But what your eyes also showed you was he took a lot of long hook shots, like some shots that were short mid-range jumpers, it felt like, but he took them as hook shots because of how far away he was from the basket, all of these things. And the numbers confirm what the eyes saw. Under the basket, scoring at the rim, Zach Edey was 73.9%. That's in the green. League average was 66.4% at the rim. He was 73.9%. A great scorer right under the basket. You get Zach Edey the ball, he's got 2 feet right there in front of the rim. Is good night. He's going to score 3 out of 4 times at least. But if you have the ability to say, if we keep him out of that restricted area, we just push him away a little bit from the basket, that's where Zach Edey struggled. And when I say struggled, I mean struggled. That's where he was in the red. When you look at paint scoring opportunities, non-rim paint scoring opportunities, this information is from shotcreator.com. Zach Edey shot 49 of 124. That's 39.5% from the field. In the paint still. These are paint shots, just not at the rim. 39.5%. League average was 44.4%. And when we're pointing out league average, we're talking about bigs and we're talking about guards coming into the paint. The Ja Morants, Desmond Baines, all type of guards. 39.5% was a really disappointing number. That's a number that has to improve. That's a number that I think will improve. Now, the other point that I'm going to make kind of plays off of this, right? Because at the end of the day, this is what it comes down to me. And we talk about Zach Edey, and you talk about a lot of bigs. He's just got to get stronger. He's just got to get stronger. When you watch Zach Edey in college, I don't really remember too many games where he wasn't physically stronger, at least, and especially in those last 2 seasons, where he wasn't physically stronger than the opponent. And he took advantage of that. He got 2 feet in the paint where he wanted to be and took the shot he wanted exactly. Pretty much almost every time. But you watch this past season, like I just said, we're watching a bunch of long hook shots. And it's not just long hook shots. It's off-balance long hook shots. It's shots that you can tell he's taking these shots because he can't get to where he wants to get. He can't move the guy further in the paint to get 2 feet in the area that he wants to get a very easier shot. And this is something that's not uncommon. Jonas Valanciunas went through it. It's a guy that kind of, has come up when we talk about the Zach Edey archetype and all that. Another one is Ivica Zubac. He went through it. He came in the league a little bit younger, talking 19, 20, 21-year-olds. He went through it in those earlier seasons before he got like 23, 24 and really started moving dudes out of the way and yamming on them at the basket. Zach Edey's capable of becoming that same guy. The strength is an area that he said he wants to improve in. it's an area when we used to talk to Taylor Jenkins, when he was talking about Zach Edey, that was something that was noticeable. Zach Edey wasn't strong enough to get to his spots just yet. And he's a rookie. He was a rookie. He's not a rookie anymore. So as he continues to progress through this ankle injury, I want to see him put in that work. Continue to get stronger. He gets stronger, it's curtains. Because he's going to be able to get exactly where he wants to get. Then he'll be able to take those shots, even if they're non-paint, even if they're non-rim paint shots. He'll be more in control when he takes those shots. And I think that was as big of a problem as the depth and how far the shots were away. You saw a lot of times his shoulders weren't really squares with the basket and things like that. It was just, you could tell that's not the shot that he wanted. It didn't look like the shots that he was taking at Purdue a lot of times. But at the end of the day, all that being said, there's still a lot of high hope for Zach Edey. I didn't even mention the rebounding stuff that much because we all know what he can be as a rebounder. I think this is a double-double guy this upcoming season. I really feel that Zach Edey is a guy we're talking about. We'll do some stat projections and stuff later on, in the months leading up to the season. But I'm just going to say right now, I feel like he's a double-double guy going into this upcoming season with what we saw at the end of the season under Tomas Isolo. What about the other centers on the roster? There are a couple other guys that will factor in, especially if Zach Edey misses some time. Let's talk about those two guys coming up here on Locked On Grizzlies. Brandon Clark, Jock Landale. There's two other centers on the Grizzlies roster, two other guys who will be factors in who starts. If Zach Edey, as projected, as expected, misses time at the beginning of the regular season, and I say as expected, it's pretty much what we've heard. So when Zach Edey misses a little bit of time at the beginning of the regular season, you're going to need someone else to fill in that starting center role. It's probably going to be one of two guys. Santi Aldama could start, and you can move Jaren to the 5. You could go Jaren, Santi, and just a very talented lineup. But I don't think the Grizzlies will do that. So right now we're going to say it's Brandon Clark, it's Jock Landale. Those are the two guys. Now, we've talked about, the positive, negatives, and things a little bit. We're going to dive in a little bit real quick here. Real quick. With Brandon Clark, he's played a lot with Jaren Jackson Jr., right? You know when you throw him on the floor alongside of Jaren, you throw him on the floor alongside of Santi, he complements those guys really well. Those are the floor spacers. Those are the guys who are going to take 5, 6 3-point shots a game. Brandon Clark's going to get to that floater. Really interested to see how Brandon Clark responds to last season. Like, Brandon Clark was a guy every single year in his career. This has been an automatic double-digit score. Last season, it wasn't that simple. I think that was another guy. We talked about it a lot with John Morant. That was another guy who kind of had to find his way in that new offense. And it didn't look like, at least from a scoring standpoint, he just didn't find his way. The knack for scoring wasn't the same in that new offense. But, again, this is a guy who's going to be an excellent rim runner in the Isolo system. Guy's going to set some screens. He's going to catch lobs. He loves that short. He loves the short roll into that floater. But there are rebounding concerns that come, right, a little bit with Brandon Clark. I think he's an excellent guy when you talk about, on the offensive glass with his activity, tipping the ball out, just having a knack for getting the ball. Defensively, was not a great defensive rebounder this past season, and it showed up a couple times, right? I keep going back to those games against Cavaliers. They have a lot of size in the front court. That's a team that's going to play Evan Mobley and Jared Allen majority of minutes at center, and both of those guys are excellent rebounders. And when you saw Brandon Clark matched up against those guys, struggled a little bit. And that was a familiar theme, a large part of last season against some of the bigger teams. And now you're seeing teams get even bigger in today's NBA, where you got the Dallas Mavericks, who have Daniel Gafford, who have, Anthony Davis, who have Derek Lively. And you got the Denver Nuggets now with Nikola Jokic. And then they got, Jonas Valanciunas to back him up. And now you got the Clippers with Brook Lopez and Ivica Zubac. Like, there's a lot of size in the Western Conference, at this point, not to mention the reigning champions are going to throw Isaiah Hartenstein and Chet Holmgren at you more times than not for 48 minutes. So these are the guys that Brandon Clark will be competing against. And you're going to need him to match the intensity, to be physical. He's shown he can be physical. Everyone loves his defensive versatility. That's where he stands out. That's where he's different than these other bigs. He can go out on the perimeter and say, move out of the way, guard. I can switch this, and you ain't got to come over here and help me. I got it. He's proven that he can be that guy who can simplify the game defensively for the Grizzlies with his ability to switch and hold his own on the perimeter against guards. Now, Jock Landale, this one is a little bit different. Jock Landale does not have a lot of NBA starting experience. And even in that starting experience, the numbers won't necessarily just wow you. Like you're talking about a guy in his NBA career in starts. You're talking about starts, he's averaged around 24 and a half, 25 minutes per game. And in that time, he's averaged 10 and a half points, 5.5 rebounds. If he's playing 24 minutes for the Grizzlies and you're getting 5.5 rebounds per game, it's not good. It's not going to be good. But here's the thing. Don't fret just yet. But if you look at the advanced numbers with the Rockets for the last couple of years, the numbers suggest that Jock Landale is a rugged rebounder. It's an improvement rebounder. And if that's the case, at his size, with his ability to set screens, with the physicality that he's going to play with, right? This is a guy, Jock Landale ain't known for being the guy who's going to get bullied around. He presents an interesting case as a guy who could start. And when this conversation is being had, I've been trying to think, who would I rather start at the beginning of the season? If I'm just hypothetically speaking right now, we're just hypothetically speaking. We say Zach Edey misses 15 games. 15 games. You need someone to hold the fort down for 15 games. I'm looking at it like this. 15 games is not a huge sample size. So I don't think you have to stick to one guy. I know some people say, Damichael, you're taking the easy way out. But seriously, I think Brandon Clark is your best option overall. There's the familiarity with Jaren. If he starts at the beginning of the season, he misses some time, guess what? Familiarity with Santi. He's got that too. And he complements both of those guys well. Brandon Clark, that is. We know this. Start Brandon Clark. Most games, if you're playing, teams who I would say aren't the greatest rebounding teams or whatever the case may be. But when you're going into those matchups, you got Jokic on the other end. You got Zubac on the other end. Those bigger, those bulkier centers that are capable of having those 20 and 20 games, as we've seen both of those dudes do against the Grizzlies. They can throw up 20 and 20 on the Grizzlies if you got the wrong center in there. That's when I'm starting Jock Landale. So I'm looking at it like this is a change of pace thing. And this is how we saw the Grizzlies start off last season. If you guys remember, there were games that Brandon Clark started. There were games that Zach Edey started when you played the more physical teams or the bigger teams or whatever the case may be. I don't think that would be a bad strategy to start out, because to me, the goal should be to just win. I don't care about building chemistry up for the long haul and all that, because you're not going to have your preferred starting five. You build chemistry up and all that when you're starting five, when you got Ja Morant, Jalen Wells, Jaren Jackson Jr., Zach Edey, and whoever the fifth starter is going to be. When you got those five guys in there, that's when you can focus on, all right, this is our starting five. These are the guys we're going to roll with for a while. Let's maximize this group. But until then, you're surviving. We won't find out what the schedule looks like until sometime in August. It'll be mid-August when the NBA drops this new schedule. But when the new schedule comes out, look for that. What are that first stretch of games looks like? Because that's where we're going to be able to see, okay, it's going to be Brandon Clark. It's going to be Jock Landale. Let me know what you guys think. You're saying, Damichael, start Jock Landale. He doesn't have a lot of NBA starting experience, but he brings that physicality, he brings that size, and he'll be able to rebound the basketball better than Brandon Clark. But some people may be on the side of me and say, hey, let's go with what we know. We know that Brandon Clark's going to compete. We know that Brandon Clark plays well with Ja Morant. He's going to set screens. He's going to roll to the rim. And in the ESLO system, he should thrive a little bit more than he did last year in the new system that Taylor Jenkins, Noah LaRoche, and those guys introduced to the scene. So that's my take. I say, hey, you change your pace. One night it could be Jock Landale. One night it could be Brandon Clark. We'll see how that plays out. Thank you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies on today. for your second listen, find the Locked On NBA podcast where there is no offseason. Doug, Matt, and Hayes keep you up to date on contract negotiations, rumors, and everything you need to be the most informed NBA fan. Find Locked On NBA on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Once again, we appreciate you guys for tuning in to Locked On Grizzlies. Make sure you continue to like, rate, comment, review, subscribe. We'll be back with you on next week. All brand new shows of Locked On Grizzlies. And we got a lot of things planned for next week, too. So make sure you stay tuned for that. Joe Monax will be back in the fold with me as well. But until then, remember, Locked On Grizzlies is free and available wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Damichael Cole, and we'll see you on Locked On Grizzlies.